Hello, thanks for joining us today. I'm Brandon Bauer at Voice Art Asset Management Group, partner and senior wealth manager, and today we have Ashley Rigby at Golden Age Retirement Coaching. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's great.
You know, it's funny, before this interview, I didn't really know that retirement coaches existed outside of just wealth management, right? And so recently I've kind of had a realization that beyond wealth, there are people helping clients of ours manage purpose, sense of kind of what's next in retirement. We've got the money thing figured out, but you want to walk through maybe just someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm ready to retire, but now what's next? Help me find a purpose, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying people come to me usually for two different reasons. Mm-hmm. One is because they're on the cusp of retirement and they're very scared of what that transition is. It's a very big transition. Or they have already retired and they are not enjoying themselves, or they're not happy. And so those are the two reasons that somebody would either come to me or work with me, and those are the two situations that we tend to work through, whether it's pre-retirement or post-retirement, and then thinking about strategically where are they feeling stuck, and then how do we help them move forward from there.
So I would assume then that the sooner someone can engage with you, the better. When they come to you after the problem's already occurring, it may not be as advantageous as kind of looking ahead and saying, hey, let's think about this before we retire. I mean, walk me through kind of what you advise people to do when it comes to that.
Well, we have different tools. So if it's pre-retirement, there's certain tools to use. So for example, there's something we do that's called an RQ assessment. It was introduced by the Retirement Coaching Association. It's 56 questions. It's a personalized assessment. And it's not ranking whether you're going to thrive in retirement or struggle in retirement. It's really this holistic, comprehensive view of what is your anticipation of what retirement means to you, and how resilient are you through this major life transition. The result of that assessment, which is pretty quick, it takes really about 30 minutes for an individual to take, but it provides a personalized outlook. It's a 15-page report, and it really helps the individual understand where are they really well prepared to make this leap, this transition, and where are there areas for improvement. And then they can just start to work that plan, and that's something that they can do 3 years, 2 years, even 6 months prior to retirement is really, really valuable. If they have already retired and they're not happy or feeling unfulfilled, which is so incredibly common and something that we don't talk about enough, we don't normalize it, that this is a major life transition, then there's other tools that we can use. So it's called the Retirement Wellness Plan, and there's also some brainstorming we can do to figure out perhaps, they're really satisfied in some aspects of their life and maybe dissatisfied in others, and then really start to hone in on how do we perfect those.
So you mentioned resources. One of the things we notice is a lot of people's friends or connections are in the workplace, right?
Sure.
They leave.
Yes.
Those connections, those professional relationships, they're not around as much anymore. I mean, what resources do you have available to help people kind of not make new friends, but it looks different.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That is work. I love when individuals think about what their relationship landscape is going to look like before leaving the workplace. It's really, really important. You've probably experienced this yourself or with a colleague, where a colleague may leave, or a friend may leave your community or something like that, and you may say, oh, we're going to keep in touch. Once that person...
It's great in theory, but reality...
It is so good in theory, but once that person is out of your orbit, whether it be a professional orbit or, a friendship orbit or community orbit, it's really, really hard to keep that relationship intact. And it doesn't mean that you don't care about that individual or they don't care about you, but that's why it's really, really important to think about what is this new landscape for relationships going to look like for me post-retirement. And that may mean before I exit this organization or my job or this company, perhaps I want to get on a board. It's much easier to get on a board before you exit than it is after.
That's interesting. When we do have clients that have retired, they're on boards and they say, I still feel like I have a sense of work purpose.
Yeah.
Because the general sense of work is no longer needed because you've worked your whole life to retire. And that's a good point. So then you look at, balancing. So work is gone now. You've got passions, family, other commitments. that takes an adjustment, right? So, and I don't know how long it takes, a year, 6 months, 2 years, but what do
5 years.
Five? Okay, I did not anticipate that to be the answer.
Yeah.
So to rebalance a work-life balance takes 5 years when work's gone.
Yeah.
And how do you suggest people do that?
Statistically, that's a great question. So statistically, life transitions take 5 years.
Really?
It's not just retirement, but also I think societally we make it seem as though retirement really truly is this, and I don't mean to be crass here, but like one long Viagra commercial. And unfortunately, it's not. There are, yes, of course, elements of joy and, fun and vacation, but it also can be a really long period of somebody's life. And humans are social creatures, and we're also driven to work in some capacity. Work, I use that in kind of loose terms. Work could mean, volunteering. It could mean caring for an aging parent or children. The number one thing I'd say to manage that transition well, one is expect it to be longer than you think.
Yeah, people do not like hearing that, I bet.
And but if you can anticipate it's going to be long,
yeah,
that is okay. And then the other piece is, and not just to, one of the things I say to my clients is enjoy being in the process of becoming. Like really enjoy where you are right now as you become, whatever next version that is that you're moving towards. The piece that I would say, you mentioned relationships and family and that shifting of dynamics. The number one thing that I tend to, or my clients come to me with that they're struggling with is around boundary setting.
Yeah. So, okay, we kind of talked before we got on here today or came to the room. You've got a spouse who's at work 40, 50 hours a week. You have another spouse who maybe retired sooner or chose to work from home. They had all that time and space to themselves. So we've got two people colliding a world here. Talk to me about boundaries, how that looks.
Sure.
That could be messy, I bet.
One of actually the most common things that I have come across or that my clients have come to me with is with one individual who is employed and the partner is encouraging their retirement. And that person doesn't necessarily want to retire.
There's a resentment sometimes around that?
There's a lot of reasons, but it could be that they... it could be that they're also fearful of how that relationship might shift, or that they have a lot of their purpose is tied into their work in a way that perhaps that other individuals isn't. Or there might be differences in how much time they want to spend together. Or perhaps they do or don't have shared activities. Like all those types of things are things to be uncovered and discussed, and it's hard. They can be really hard to have that conversation.
So I'm going to go back to kind of the beginning here, the purpose. Like how many of your clients, is it just a broad strokes percentage, struggle with purpose and identity in the first year of retirement? Or is it not as maybe much of an issue as I think it could be?
Well, I think purpose in general is a very tough... It's a big word, and I think it trips a lot of people up, regardless of where you are in your life, right? Even if somebody today were like, what's your purpose? It's a big question, and some people attach themselves to a life's purpose or a mission, and some don't, right? So I think that's one thing, is to understand where that individual is coming in terms of what they how they identify a well-lived life, right? Some of people attach that to purpose. I think, again, it goes back to that planning, because I've worked with individuals who are, let's say they're employed right now, and I'm thinking of one in particular. She just wasn't quite ready to retire, but she knew she wasn't doing her life's purpose. So she was kind of early on the retirement side age, a traditional retirement side age, but she knew she had to pivot out of her traditional career. And that is just a transition. And so she ended up working through kind of a pre-retirement practice, if you will, to uncover what her passion is. She ended up leaving corporate America, and she became a career coach.
Yeah. So kind of in your line of work.
Yes.
You coached her into your role.
I mean, I didn't coach her into my role. I do actually have I don't know if it's a funny story, but a client of mine last year, she had retired. She was in her early 60s, a long, successful career in corporate America. She retired and really excited for more freedom, more time. And she found me, I think she was several years post-retirement, really unhappy. To your point, wasn't exactly sure what her purpose was now. She also felt like her social networks really dried up, even though she had good work relationships and people said that they would stay in touch. That just wasn't the case. She ended up also becoming a coach. I promise you, I don't coach.
Everyone that is your client becomes a coach.
No, I mean, she's a very interesting story because she is actually now a coach for Golden Age. She actually became a certified professional retirement coach, which is phenomenal because now she can help other people navigate the same experience or a similar experience to something she went through, which is she had this great anticipation of what retirement would be. And I think it's the one that we project as a society and culture. And when she was living it, it just, there was a huge anticipation gap. It just wasn't what she thought it would.
You know, you hit on 2 points there that I just briefly want to touch on. Is the one is society. I think we're so used to seeing streams and reels and listening to podcasts and information overload. And you think, well, society tells me I should do it this way. But I think sometimes just scratch all that out, get to a blank piece of paper and say, forget what society's telling me to do. No preconceived notions or ideas. Let's just go to the deepest desires of your heart and start there.
I love that.
And can we go around that? You know, I have clients that will say, well, I think I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And I say, well, what do you want to do? I mean, I'm not a retirement coach. And in fact, I didn't know there was a certification for that. What does that entail?
The certification?
Yeah, from a training perspective, how they train you, how you look at situations.
Yeah, sure. So there's a Retirement Coaches Association. So that's the organizing body that you would do your certification training. You have to do coaching hours, and then you have to keep up your specifically retirement coaching credentialing hours every year to make sure that you're in good standing. In addition to being a certified professional retirement coach, I'm also an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation, which to get that certification, you have to do over 100 hours. That is and also sit for 2 tests. And that's pretty, I will say that is it's a hard test, it's substantial, and that the coaching hours is pretty significant. It's really those 2 together that I think differentiate how I show up as a coach. I think sometimes people think coaching as a practice is advice giving. It's not. It's really mostly active listening. That's the main thing.
Yeah, the 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason situation. Huh? I recently had a client who I said, hey, what's the best part of retirement, or what are you liking about it? And he said, I get to spend more time with my wife. I won't say their names for confidentiality, but I was so delighted to hear that answer of, you know, we love being around each other and this is just amazing. And then to pivot from there, I had another client recently who I said, you know, if you could give one piece of advice to my clients, right, what would that one piece of advice be? And the answer is always all over the board. This question, but he said, you know, I would tell them to travel early and travel often because you don't know when your body will betray you. And he said, yeah, I'm able-bodied, but my wife gave out sooner than I did. Or the other, you know, normally us men pass before females, right? So how do you help walk people through beyond financially, but the experiences, when to take the experiences? Because there's a point where you're not going to be able to take them.
I love that. Actually, another wealth advisor that I was speaking with, so let's say your retirement years, let's say that they spanned more than 30 years, right? And that would be amazing if they do. And he put them, basically grouped them into decades. The first decade is your go-go years. The second decade is your slow-go years, and then the third decade is your no-go.
The no-go years. Oh, yeah.
And really plan accordingly for that. And so you're really thinking about, like, okay, I'm in this phase right now where we have, it could be the financial means to travel, the interest in travel, the physical ability to travel at the extent that we want. And then think about what would that transition look like, you know, for that decade, and then start to do this kind of stepped approach. I also love stepped approaches into retirement, which is really not that common, unfortunately. Typically, somebody will, let's say, you know, they work for let's just say, over 40 years, and then retirement can be almost this like cliff.
Faucet just
shuts off. And instead of, I would love to see if culturally we could have more understanding to say if you could have a stepped approach to retirement.
Ease into it.
Yeah, whether it's moving into like part-time or, consulting. And many people do that, but I still think because I don't think we're there yet, quite frankly. I think we will get there.
Yeah, my father-in-law retired, realized, I'm bored, I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
You can only play golf so much.
Yeah.
And now he drives people around to dialysis appointments and
I
loves it.
I love
He says,
that.
I have a purpose, people depend on me.
Yeah, I love
And it's
that.
not about the money, it's back to the beginning of the conversation, the purpose.
Yeah.
That purpose just rings through and through and through, probably in the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years
sure.
too. And sometimes people's children think that their children are the purpose of their grandparents. You don't retire to become a glorified babysitter.
Yeah.
Back to the boundaries. I mean, how do you help people walk through that of, hey, you want to spend time with your grandkids, and maybe some want more than others, but saying no is okay too, maybe.
Yeah, and I think absolutely. So one, it's understanding where you derive joy and energy. And that takes time to uncover, especially if, let's say, you've been working for 40 hours a week or more. You don't have as much time to start to explore, like, wow, I really do like being a caregiver to young children 20 hours a week. That's a really demanding task or job, even if it is your own grandchildren, right? And so I think understanding, like, what is it that gives you energy? Where do you derive joy? And knowing that you might have to experience it for a little bit before you can make those decisions. So I've had some folks who maybe they'll say or anticipate that they're really going to enjoy watching their grandchildren, and then they're doing it and realize, like, wow, this is more demanding than I thought, or this comes with additional challenges that I wasn't anticipating, or I have other opportunities that I'm actually also excited about, and I'd like to explore those too. And so I think having those open lines of communication, knowing that you can set up boundaries without, harming relationships. There's great ways to do that, but it's not easy. And I guess, like, that's one of the things that I guess where I derive, like, joy and purpose with the clients that I work with is really normalizing that there are many feelings that come up with even life's, biggest rewards, if you want to put retirement into that bucket. And that's okay. Normalize that there's mixed emotions.
So there's two other things I want to hit on today. So a lot of them, and these are great points. We talked about the go-go years. I love the three-tiered approach. Sure. It's actually helping kind of guide part of this conversation. Yeah. We spent a lot of time in the before the go-go even, but now if we look at the slow or no-go, my advice to clients, especially, so I'll touch on money here for a second, then I want to go to health, but I advise people, I said, hey, there's going to be a point where you're not going to take care of your finances, your money, and depending on how much money's being transitioned, you should probably talk to your family about what that looks like, why your intentions are the way they are, why they're not the way that you want them to, the children may want them to be. How do you advise people, or how do you walk them through having those conversations? Because before, money was a taboo situation, subject. You didn't touch it. Now I feel like we're becoming more comfortable with it, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it. I'm just interested to know your perspective on having that conversation. Because that's probably a slow go year. You don't do it right in the beginning of retirement. Or maybe you do. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's definitely based on, like, the family dynamics. I will say for sure. I think it's also based on the relationship that couple or individual has with their children. Some relationships are very open in terms of they talk about their finances openly. They'll talk about life plans. They'll talk about, where they want to live, whether they want to age in place or they have other accommodations that they're thinking about. And they're very open and transparent. Sometimes kids are even welcome and a part of that conversation. And then I've worked with other folks where they really do not have those open lines of communication. And so I think the way that we move through that, you can't have this one size fits all approach to each of them, because there's just no way to make that work. But I think, again, making sure that the individual, so like as a coach, one of the things that we know is we can only coach the individual that is in the room with us.
Yeah.
So that is who we're working through, that one individual. And so if it's that individual who's struggling with, making sure that their needs are met or anticipating what their needs would be in the future, it's us as a coach helping that individual get clear communication, clear vision for their future for themselves, and then gaining the skills to articulate those to the people that they love. Like I can't, if they don't have a close relationship with, let's say, a daughter or a son, I'm not working with that daughter or son necessarily.
You can't force it.
Yeah, I'm just working with that individual. So it's really about what is it that you need or want? How do you articulate that, and how do you envision moving forward with that?
Yeah, that's good. We see that as people age, they get a little more stubborn and ornery.
Yes. Okay.
From time to time, not everybody. And my wife actually worked in long-term care neuro rehab facilities.
Oh, wow.
And she always says, hey, before your cognitive decline occurs or begins, to make the plan of where we're going to live when it happens, when you're in your right mind. Because when you're not in your right mind, you're not going to be able to make that decision. And a lot of people wait till it's too late. When do you advise your clients to make this plan?
Ooh. Well, I'm a planner by nature. So, I mean, I'm the type of person,
Have you made your plan now? Are we talking earlier?
Yes, I have a book on my bookshelf that's called I'm Dead, Now What? So I'm a planner,
Right.
and I talk very openly about these things. I mean, this might sound a little morbid, but I had my mother recently get... she's turning 70 this month actually, and I had her, for a bunch of reasons, but I had her get a professional headshot. I'm like, Mom, this would be great for an obituary. I'm just the type of person that I don't shy away from tough conversations, and I would rather be transparent, upfront, and honest. I get it, not everybody is like that, but I think leaning into first yourself of what is it that I need, I want. A lot of people struggle just with that.
Yeah.
But if you can't get that for yourself, it's really hard to clarify that with somebody else.
Okay, so bonus question, last one. Okay. And thanks for the time today. I appreciate it. Yeah. If you could give new retirees one piece of advice in a single sentence, what would that be?
They've already retired? Okay, they've already retired. Okay, I would say, and I really try not to give advice, but so I would maybe pose it as a question, and I would say, what is something that gave you deep joy or pleasure or fulfillment as a child that you could redeploy later in life?
So reach into your inner child. Okay, bonus question, because you struck me with your answer. Back up 5 years prior to retirement.
Ooh.
A single sentence still.
Okay.
What's that that you would give them, that piece of advice?
Plan for your retirement like you did your career.
That's good.
Really think about it. Really think about it. If you think about, let's just say a high schooler, right? They're taking assessments, they're taking tests, they're exploring different activities that they're interested in, they're in different clubs, they're networking in different ways, they're doing summer jobs, all of these things, anticipating, trying to articulate, what will my career look like? Where do I shine? What are my skills? We do none of that, or so little of that, later in life. And yet we have another 30 years. So your career could come to an end, and you've kind of become less curious, yet you still have so many years ahead of you, and potentially more time.
And the proverbial cliff, there it is. Yeah, there's no hearse with a luggage rack. You cannot take your money with you.
Yeah, so just plan for it. And I think one of the things I'll say about retirement planning is I do wish there were more resources for it. There are many, many books on retirement. Unfortunately, most of them, I don't want to say unfortunately, you know this probably, most of them are about the financial side of retirement. And that leaves out a lot of where people struggle in retirement. It's the psychological part with how do I move through this major life transition. It's the 11th most stressful life event, retirement, and we have very little resources related to the emotional side of it.
Well, and you had a good statement before we walked in here. You said, Brandon, you try to make them wealthy.
Yes.
I try to make them.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are different. Well, thanks for joining us today. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's goldenage.com. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Ashley, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
And
it's
as
a
always,
pleasure.
thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Ashley directly
Yeah,
or
thank you.
myself.
Thank you.
Let's keep moving forward together.